Good afternoon. It's Thursday, April the 2nd, and this is the second installment of our Thursday Thoughts. Um, I think we're getting better at this. I think we're getting better at the whole meeting and teaching and praying and gathering online. This is now week 3 of social isolation. We've had some practice at this now. I get the impression that for many of us, we're getting into a groove, we're getting into a rhythm of how to conduct ourselves and how to work from home. We've got our setups. I know that for us personally, Cindy has a setup now that she's working from home. I've always kind of had a setup, but now Cindy has a whole workstation that she's got for her work. The boys have settled into a rhythm in terms of how they use their time, the things that they have to do and accomplish throughout the day, when they can relax. We come together for lunch every day. We come together for dinner every day. We're getting into a rhythm of being sort of cooped up at home. And I'm not necessarily saying that I'm not going to lie. I'm still very eager to get outside and have things back to normal. But in the meantime, I hope that your experience is like ours, is that the whole process of being at home and trying to stay safe, that just like you're experiencing a sense of getting used to this situation. I hope that this past Sunday with our worship service, I just based on some of the comments that I've heard, it sounds to me like the quality of the stream was more robust. It was better than it was the first week, and I'm glad to hear that. We're there's a whole bunch of people, and although that's not the point of this Thursday Thoughts, let me just do a quick shout out to the people who are behind the scenes just to get the stream going. There are 3 individuals that I want to mention. Ross Bricky, who he's part of our English ministry, and then 2 brothers you may or may not know. One of them, his name is Feng Wen. Feng Wen, he's on the one of the parents on the Chinese side. He's got younger children, and also Ken Wang, Feng Wen, and Ken Wang. Ken Wang was recently elected as a deacon. These 3 brothers are really the magic behind getting the stream going. Without them, we would have a very, very hard time. Nate has been super helpful in terms of helping with the sound and transitioning from the B building to the sanctuary. Chris Liu has also been very, very helpful. Of course, we have the worship leaders. Theo has been a part of this whole process as well. I get the impression that we are really geared up for having Good Friday and Easter, which is in a couple of weeks, but by all accounts, we're going to be doing this online. And other than us not being together, which is still not ideal, I get the impression we're going to be okay as far as having a stream ready to go so that we can commemorate, obviously, the death and the resurrection of Jesus. Let me take a moment this afternoon, or this morning when you're watching this morning. Let me take a moment to talk about information. Okay, where do you get your information from? Obviously, the topic of the day is COVID-19. Where do you get your COVID-19 information from? Is it from CNN? Do you watch CNN every day? How about Fox News? Do you watch Fox every day? Or how about NBC or ABC? What do you watch? What do you listen to? Do you read the New York Times? Do you read the Wall Street Journal? Do you read the San Francisco Chronicle? Do you read the Contra Costa Times? Where do you get your information from? Do you get it from an online forum of people that you have come to find that are like-minded and seem to be a reliable source of information? Do you get it from friends emailing you articles and tips? when this COVID-19 situation really just began, I found that I was getting information from all different sources. I would get texts, and emails, and those emails would contain very grim outlooks of what's happening. And I would always wonder, where is this coming from? This email chain. And I don't want to say, obviously, who it's from, but I'm sure that you may have stumbled across some kind of email chain letter at some point, a text chain letter, maybe some information that you thought maybe is from a dubious source. Where are you getting your information from? In today's world, in today's situation, being able to trust the source of information that we have, to trust it completely, is absolutely paramount. When you get some kind of email or you hear some rumor from not necessarily, or the source is not easily and readily identifiable. My first thought when I get this is, I'm going to do a search on this article, this person, this statement, to see if this is really from that person. There is some credibility. We live in the United States of America, where we have a free press. There is credibility and editing, and there is a reliableness to things that come from credible sources. The source of your information, how important is that? You hear the regular updates from our government leaders. Do you trust what they're telling you? Do you trust the stats and the outlook and the picture that they're painting? I have a feeling, my guess is that many of you have a hard time trusting that. And that puts us in a very, very precarious and difficult situation when we can't trust the people who are supposed to lead us. Now, this is Thursday Thoughts. I want to introduce this idea because, to me, I want to remind us of truth where we don't have to question the source. How nice is that? How nice is it when we can read information about the world, about ourselves, about our outlook, about the state that we're in? How nice is it when we can read information and say without a doubt, I trust this. I trust the source. I know where it's coming from, and I believe it because I believe him. I believe him. I believe him that he's telling me the truth. I want to draw your attention this week to just one phrase that we see in a short 3 or 4 chapter section of the Bible. One phrase from my hero, from the one that we turn our attention to, from the one that we ultimately trust. And that phrase is from Jesus himself. What I'm going to do right now, I'm going to share my screen and let you see what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the book of John. You can see here, John chapter 14, verse 25. The one phrase that I want to turn your attention to is the phrase right here. We're reading from the New American Standard Version. This one tends to translate this, when it's the same phrase in the original language, the New American Standard is going to translate it the exact same way, or just about, in English. The phrase that I want to draw your attention to is right here highlighted. These things I have spoken to you. 4, 5, 6 times here in this section, from John chapter 13 to John chapter 17. John 13, or to right at the beginning of 17. So John 13 through the end of 16. 4 chapters Jesus gives a last message at the Last Supper to his disciples. And several times he says this phrase, "These things I have spoken to you while I am with you." I want you to pay attention to these phrases here and what follows. These things I have spoken to you while abiding with you. I'm going to click here in John chapter 15, verse 11. These things I have spoken to you so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be made full. John chapter 16, verse 1. These things I have spoken to you so that you may be kept from stumbling. And then verse 4. These things I have spoken to you so that when the hour comes, you may remember that I told you of them. And then in verse 6 here, it's the same phrase. It's not translated exactly the same way, so it's not highlighted. But verse 6 says, "But because I have said these things to you, sorrow has filled your heart." And then we jump down to 16:25. Jesus says, "These things I have spoken to you in figurative language. An hour is coming when I will no longer speak to you in figurative language, but will tell you plainly of the Father." And then finally in verse 33, "These things I have spoken to you, so that in me you may have peace. In the world you have tribulation, but take courage. I have overcome the world." When I see these words, "These things I have spoken to you, so that in me you may have peace. In the world you have tribulation, but take courage. I have overcome the world." I think to myself, Jesus knew that there would come a time when we would need these words. He knew it. Now, let's be very, very, very straightforward here and honest. This passage, Jesus specifically is speaking about the tribulation the disciples and other followers of Jesus are going to experience because of their profession of faith in him. Jesus warns, "The world hates me, and thus it will also hate you." The tribulation we talked about last time, the tribulation that Jesus speaks about in this passage is specifically, very clearly, the tribulation that comes from believing and professing faith in Jesus. But as I also said to you last week, doesn't it also apply to the tribulation that we experience in the world because the world is broken? I think it does. And right now, there is very much an absence of peace. There's an absence of rest. Everywhere you turn, everyone is telling you to be afraid, but they're not using afraid. They're using the word cautious. And please don't get me wrong. Being cautious is absolutely important. It's paramount. We need to be cautious. We need to be careful. Stay at home. Stay inside. This is me telling you what everybody else is telling you. But more than that, Jesus says, "I've got a lot to tell you so that you might have and experience peace that only I can give. In the world, you will have tribulation." Jesus knew it. "But take courage, because I have overcome and defeated the world." Do you understand and believe that Jesus has defeated and overcome the world? See, if there's two thoughts I want to leave you with this time. Number one, if you're looking for something to meditate on, then I'm going to encourage you this week, John chapter 13 through 16. Jesus' final words to his disciples. There's a reason why we don't have to question the source of our information. Because we know As he tells us, I tell you these things so that you might have joy. I tell you these things so that you might have forewarning. I tell you these things for your good. There is no doubt that what we receive from Jesus as far as information is concerned is absolutely 100% completely true, and it is for your benefit. I'm not sure if we feel confident in saying that about other sources of information, but this source of capital T truth, we know comes from somebody who has our back. As much as you pay attention to CNN and Fox and the SF Chronicle and the New York Times and the LA Times and whatever other source of information you turn to for the latest, as much as we pay attention to that, let's pay attention to the absolute truth teller. And the difference is, number one, we can trust him. And number two, we can trust him because he has our back. I'm praying for us, all of us, this week, that we might make it through this time safely and quickly with joy. Looking forward to seeing you again on Sunday. Have a great day.